Yo, so what is good, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're back at you guys with another video. That's right, another video. And if some of you know me, I barely post stuff as much, but like I told you guys recently, I'm gonna start uploading more content because you guys have been requesting certain topics about, especially with wholesale stuff. One thing I noticed, a lot of people come at me with wholesale questions. But on this video, I'm basically going to go over the difference between brands and distributors and why you want to know the difference, especially when you're opening accounts, contacting each one of them, and just getting a general sense of what to expect when you're contacting these brands, distributors. All right. Now, this is not going over what to do in a situation when you call them. I'll make a separate video for that. So if if you want to stay tuned for that, be sure to check out, the channel. Make sure you hit subscribe, drop a comment down below, let me know what you guys think, and smash the like button. But without further ado, let's get started. Made a list right here real quick. That way I don't lose my train of thought because that always happens. But so little by little, one by one, I'm gonna go over, just go through each topic, go on the differences between each one, and we'll go from there. So, let's get started. Now, the difference between brands and distributors, which is probably the biggest thing in my opinion, is that brands, they're more tied to their products, okay? This is coming from small business owners who really, started a business. They created a brand with products. They really started scaling it up. And, this is more personal to them because, they created this from scratch. And yeah, so it's probably doing very well for them. And, they don't want to basically make that bad for the end consumer. Now, with distributors, they don't really care about the products that they carry. They're in the business of making money, moving inventory and getting it out the way and onto the next, okay? And so that's why with brands, they're more tied to their product because they put their heart and soul into it. So it makes sense, And like I said, distributors, they carry a ton of brands, but it's not like they created those brands themselves, okay? So that's probably the biggest thing about distributors and brands. And it's also important to know that because it puts you in a different mindset when you're contacting each one differently because you need to know where they're coming from their point of view, okay? I get it. As buyers, Amazon sellers, you want to contact them, make that money, sell that inventory, but again, you got to go into with different mindsets when contacting them. But again, I'll go deeper on a separate video and all that. So now that we got that out of the way, that also means with brands, distributors, the volume is different. Since distributors, they work with so many hundreds of thousands of different brands, they usually have way more volume, way more inventory in their warehouses that they can carry, and so they're able to push more product to you, sell more products to you, and you'll find more products. Now with brands, since they're much, much smaller by scale, they're going to have less inventory. They may have a bit more issues as far as getting you certain inventory. Maybe you find a hot product that the certain brand carries, but you can't get enough of it because, they only have a certain amount. So, so you got to weigh your pros and cons with each one. And that's one of the differences is as well, that you'll usually be able to get, you'll still get good amount of volume with both, but distributors just have tons and tons of it because they have warehouses and whatnot. Versus brands who may have a warehouse here and there, but they're at a much smaller scale versus distributors. So that's another important note. Now, here's the probably the main thing that everybody has questions about is when it comes to opening accounts. Yes, brands by nature are going to be harder to open accounts with. And again, it's like I mentioned earlier. That's because brands are more tied to their products. They care about their products. They care about their end consumers, about how they consume the product, how they get the product, So, and that's why it's harder to open accounts with brands because, again, they don't want to just let anybody sell their brand and ruin their reputations, should something go wrong, which hopefully it doesn't, but it happens, sellers do this and that. They just, so it's harder for a brand to trust someone else to sell their products. Versus a distributor, really easy to open accounts with. They may have a few restrictions. Maybe you need like a commercial address or something, but otherwise 9 out of 10 times they're willing to open an account with you just because, again, they want to move that inventory. They want to make their money. They want you to make your money. Maybe not. They really don't care. But so it's much easier, okay? And that's probably one of the good bad things about each one is that since it's harder to open accounts with brands, that means it's less competitive, right? So that means you have less competition on certain listings and whatnot, which is good. It gives you a good advantage to take over a listing potentially or share it with very few sellers. Versus with distributor, everybody's able to get the same product, so you have a bit more competition selling those particular products. And so, like I said, ways and cons, right? So you got to think about those type of things when you're outsourcing for brands or for distributors. Now let's see, websites. Usually brands will have better websites just because, again, they put their time and soul into their business, which means they're going to put their time and their soul into their website. And I have a few brand accounts, so they look very well, very organized, just really really smooth and nice. Versus some distributors, some of them will have decent websites. I mean, I'll give no doubt, but other ones they'll put like just products up there with no UPC numbers, barely a title. And yeah, you'll have to manually source websites like that. But it's also those type of distributors that have the sucky websites that you'll actually be able to have an advantage over someone else, because they're not willing to go to that stinky website and source those products. So that's another thing about distributors and brands, is that you'll see that difference in their websites. Not all of them, but most of them for the most part. So now the next one. Stricter rules with their products. And again, this comes to opening the accounts with both. Like I said, with distributors, they really don't care what you do with those products. Some of them will ask you if you sell on Amazon or any other platform, like eBay or Walmart or something like that. But for the most part, they really don't care. They mainly ask this also because they carry certain brands that do care. And so, they'll have little agreements to not sell to certain people like Amazon sellers, at least with those particular brands. I've had distributors where they'll give me a whole spreadsheet, and it'll tell you even right there, no Amazon, so they won't sell you those products, but everything else, you're good to go. And yeah, like with brands, I mean, you'll know straight up whether they'll sell to you or not. And if you're able to open those accounts, they're going to tell you their terms and services of what you can and can't do, which leads me to my next point, which is like MAP pricing. Certain brands, they don't want you selling those certain products at a certain price. So maybe you have a product sells for Amazon on Amazon, for like $30. They don't want you going lower than that, because some brands actually value the quality of their brand. They don't want to be just some other knockoff cheap thing that you can buy from China and sell it for like $10 or something. They value their brand, so they want you to follow that MAP pricing, and which is good, because some sellers, they don't follow that. And so with that restriction, again, less competition. Some brands will knock off those sellers because they don't follow those guidelines. And again, like with distributors, as long as it doesn't dispute with any particular brand, they don't care. You can sell that product for whatever you want, as long as they get their money, they don't care. Now let's go to the next one. So one thing I noticed, that especially with distributors, that most of them will require some type of commercial address. Not all of them, but most of them. And so with those that do require it and you don't have it, just save that supplier down the road, and maybe you can decide to get a commercial address, then open that account later down the road. But otherwise, there's really nothing much you can do if they are strict on that commercial address. Now with brands, most of my brands, actually I think all of the brand accounts I have, they really don't care much for the commercial residential address. So they're willing to ship to you, just because again, they're smaller brands and they might not carry as much weight volume like distributors, because they'll usually probably ship them UPS or something, or a small freight, so which is like a little small box truck or something like that. So yeah, they're willing to ship to more residential, at least in my experience. I could be wrong. Some other sellers may say otherwise. So again, this is just coming from me personally. So that's what I've seen, at least in my experience. Now, another good thing. When it comes to money, there's a kind of a big difference. Now, it depends. Again, like a lot of these things really depends, but I notice more stuff on certain things. So with distributors, they usually require more money up front to make an account and start buying inventory. And again, this is because they're trying to push volume. Okay, they have the capacity to push that volume, which is why they have higher opening dollar amounts. So some distributors, you have to spend $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. Someone like a truckload. It just depends on the suppliers. And again, that's going to be with a lot of distributors. You need that minimum amount no matter what. Now with brands, a lot of brands I've seen when I was sourcing brands is that they really have a very low minimum, if anything. I mean, I've seen some as low as $100, $200, $500, 1,000. They really don't require much capital up front, just because again they're much smaller brands, much smaller companies, so they're not pushing that volume like distributors are. But there are some brands that will require a higher minimum starts, like 2,000, 3,000. I've seen one with like 5,000 before, so it does happen, but just not as often, at least in my experience. Now, looks like that was all the points I actually hit. So yeah, not bad. We went through all the points. Again, biggest thing, brands are more tied to their products. So when you're contacting these brands, you got to think about that, okay? But like I said, I'll go deeply on this on a separate video, going how to contact brands, distributors, and which ways to approach them. But hopefully that helped you identify the difference between a brand and a distributor. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, or anything of any sort whatsoever, feel free to drop them down in the comment section below. Alright, and let me know what you guys think. But aside from that, that'll be it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and peace as always.